Hello, this is Mila, and I'm back with my series of non-combat interviews. Today, I am interviewing Syr Tiibi. Tiibi is very well known throughout the Rising Winds. So, this being said, would you like to introduce yourself, go over your experience, and what you do?
Yeah, so like you said, my name's TB. Typically just like going by TB rather than the 17 titles accumulated over my time since I started Amtgard. I started in 2018, late 2018. Was about a month into the game and decided I was going to go to Keep on the Borderlands, so a Tri Kingdom event. So was instantly hooked from then on. I mostly focused on service and ANS during that first time before, COVID of 2020. And then through 2020, when we were shut down, did a lot of more like virtual service classes, teaching lots of ANS. You're by yourself, so lots of time to do that. And then after we opened back up, really started that grind, as the kids say, on the battle path and the sword path as well. So, yeah, I am currently a three belted knight. I have just was recently belted with my sword belt, but also received my flame and serpent in 2023, 24. I don't remember. It doesn't really matter. But yeah.
So, would you say that your role in Amtgard has evolved over time to be more of a mentor with your shift to doing ANS classes and whatnot before you pursued your battle path, or how would you say it's evolved over time?
I am not sure if it evolves so much as it is like a sine or cosine wavelength, just kind of going up and down with my interests of the moment. That's the great thing I love about Amtgard is like it encapsulates all of the things that I love to do. I love to do art and be creative and make and build things. I have an athletic outlet. I have a social outlet. I can help people in various different ways. So really, it just kind of depends on whatever mood I'm in is where I'm at. So some days I'm really excited about teaching classes, which is kind of where I'm at right now. But yeah, it's just up and down with wherever the waves take me.
That's awesome. So, I would like to ask you some general non-combat questions just to really kind of get in here. I know you mentioned that you do a lot of ANS and service. So, would you like to go into more specifics about what you do in Amtgard that isn't fighting and what you do? Because you're a master Garber, right?
Yes, I'm a Master Garber, Master Dragon, and I have 9 owls as well. So,
Oh, wow. That's super cool.
yeah, we're aiming for that 100% completion of Amtgard, apparently. But yeah, I do. Gosh, where do I even start? It's like I said, when I first started Amtgard, I was really heavy into the non-combat aspect. That mostly included service and just getting familiar with the community and the different roles, our government and how that works. So it was a lot of like boots on the ground type stuff and like actually doing the thing. After 2020, it kind of transitioned more into taking leadership roles, like doing different crap positions or teaching ANS classes for garbing or scroll work. I don't think I've done one on leather work yet, which is what most of my owls are for. But now, kind of, it is more of a, I guess, evolved into a mentorship and advocate role, as well as still continuing with some of that boots on the ground service type stuff, as well as classes and things like that peppered in. I think presently I'm sitting at like, being a voice for people who maybe get left behind a little bit, who maybe aren't as loud of an advocate for themselves, who maybe don't have an overbelt. But yeah, just being an advocate, a mentor, offering guidance to those who need it, like kind of pushing them towards, hey, have you thought about like your skill set would be great for this role in this event position or what have you. So, kind of being a jack of all trades, maybe master of none, according to this game, a master of a few, apparently. But again, kind of just, it really depends on where my heart's at the moment. So right now, although it does directly tie into combat, my big thing right now is I am really pushing, I guess you could say, legislation for the Valkyrie community. So we currently have a vote in the Rising Winds on whether or not to adopt Valkyrie tournaments into our corpora and making them, standardized more or less,
Yeah.
as well as teaching combat and sword fighting and things on that regard. But also, just I have way too much time at work to sit on the internet and cheer on my friends and send in recommendations for all the cool art they've done or all the cool service they've done. So just kind of doing that in a non-combatant capacity, I guess.
Yeah, so I know the Valkyrie tournaments tie in with combat, but I will be asking you some questions about your advocacy for that, just because I know it's important to you, and it's also important to me. So I'm going to be asking you more about that later on. So
Yeah,
as a
for sure.
heads up.
Yeah, for sure.
Would you say that there's a specific landing spot with ANS or service or crown work that you would recommend for new players who want to get into the non-combat side of Amtgard?
Landing spot. I guess that is going to depend on your park culture, to be perfectly honest. I know our game really emphasizes the sporty whack portion of the game, and so not a lot of parks invest a lot of time into fostering that community, which is a disappointment. I'm very fortunate, coming from Stormbridge and Louisville. We do have quite a few non-combatants that kind of like do a more or less sewing circle and will like crochet or paint or do whatever kind of while everybody else is getting sweaty and being tryhards on the field, which is super great. We've had quite a few really solid regents to kind of promote non-com activities, like once a month doing a belt flag painting class, or trying to think what else, basics of weaving, things like that. But if your park doesn't have that kind of like varied presence or isn't a very large park, one thing that was great that came out of COVID is the rise of Discord. We have so many servers, both for like our kingdom, our parks, our chapters, all of that, but also specific interests. So there are little crochet household Discord servers, or award artisan servers and things like that, where we can come together and have craft nights. And I think it's a pretty nice, very low commitment way to kind of get into non-com spaces and show off your art, even if you're not quite ready to throw your hat in for some of the tournaments and things like that.
Yeah, and that's really nice. I definitely know I use Discord a lot, especially when we all couldn't come together.
Mm-hmm.
So it was definitely, I think it was kind of a big push into really helping non-com get a more of a place in Amtgard, I'd say, just because, when you can't physically go out and fight people, what can you do? So being able to really explore that has been really cool.
Yeah, it's improved our communication a lot too, I think. Facebook has been great for what it's worth, but with the way Discord has been set up, there's a lot more communication and tracking, not just for ANS, but for like leadership and event organization and things like that too, in my opinion. Is it perfect? No, but I think we're a lot better off than we used to be now that we have tools at our disposal. So
Yeah, so, and I 100% agree with that. So I would actually love to talk with you about ANS in general and go into
mhm.
your masterhoods with ANS and as well as, being a Serpent Knight because it's just really interesting the scope of work that you do. So I'd really like to learn more about it. So I know you do a lot of different crafts in arts and sciences. Is there one that you consider yourself more specialized in? Or I know you mentioned that it's kind of really just depends on what you like to do at the moment, but
Yeah. Right now, probably, I guess my favorite thing to do right now is leather work. I really enjoy specifically belts, to be able to make it super personal in such a small amount of space without it like detracting from a person's garb or, just making it the loudest piece, but still being like very uniquely them. So it's been a particularly fun challenge for me to do a couple. I've gotten the privilege of doing a couple of Knights belts so far, and it's been a lot of fun. But speaking to the rest of my kind of repertoire of things, I guess I'll start at the beginning. So when I started Amtgard, and my overbelt at the time, Radiant KO, he talked to me about all these awards and stuff. I'm all like, where do you want to go? What do you want to do in Amtgard? And I was like, I don't know. I guess garbing sounds pretty cool. Like playing in dress up and making myself look really cool. Like I guess we'll start with there. And so I did, and I kind of went balls to the wall with that and speed run that. I want to say I got my master Garber in like a year and a half, 2 years or something like that. Something like pretty bonkers, especially considering I am not a professional whatsoever. Some might argue it was too soon to, or whatever, but that's, I guess, neither here nor there. But in that process, I also found myself getting requests to do scroll work, which was really great because I love doodling. I have a desk job, but I'm in meetings all the time. And, I got a notebook right in front of me actually, and like kind of doodling as I'm speaking or processing my thoughts and things like that. So scroll work was a really great way to have an outlet for kind of that like pen and paper type creativity that I've always enjoyed since I've been a little kid. But not only that, I really like appreciating my friends and giving them nice things. And that was like a super low cost way to do it, like making these super personal scrolls, trying different mediums with low risk. Because, most people, like, you're giving them a gift, they're going to love it no matter what. So it's kind of a safe opportunity to take a chance and do something a little bit different. You might be too scared to, normally try. So I ended up getting my Master Garber and Master Dragon at the same time, which was kind of bonkers. And then just kind of along the way, I slowly got into leatherworking. There is a ton of transferable skills between like my dragon path, which has been a lot of like 2D art, and garbing. It really ties into the leather work. So like you're still, especially because I do a lot of like armor as well as belts. So you're still doing all the patterns, you're still doing like all the design work and stuff. So it's just kind of been like a natural, but very much more expensive transition into a different craft. Leatherworking is really rewarding, but I don't necessarily recommend it to those on a budget, unfortunately. But it's been a lot of fun. So that's kind of my like serpent path journey in a semi brief nutshell, I guess.
So are there any specific projects you're working on right now that you'd be interested in like talking about or
Yeah, so right now, actually sitting behind me, I am working on like samurai Japanese inspired set of armor. I love, I usually field in a lamellar kit, aluminum, and some tooled leather pieces. But it's nice to not wear armor. So this is kind of like a nice in between since it's much lighter, more like flexible and things like that. So I'm trying a bunch of different techniques, like hardening and wet forming and things like that. So it's been a fun challenge to approach that. And I guess I'm a little bit of a weeaboo with the Japanese culture thing, so it's just been kind of fun to make a little LARP kit based off of an armor set that I think is pretty neat.
are there any crafts that you think you're planning on trying someday? Anything you're really looking into or stuff you'd be interested in trying that you haven't really yet?
Honestly, you have kind of inspired me to like kind of eyeball some stained glass type work. Like seeing stained glass is like, oh, so beautiful to me. So I've always kind of like wanted to do it, but I'm like, oh, do I really need slabs of glass just sitting everywhere?
As someone who does it, you don't want that. Trust. Like, it's really cool and pretty. It's also really expensive, and the learning curve for it is. It,
Yeah.
yeah. But if you ever want to learn anything though, like I'd be happy to bring all my gear over to an event and stuff if you'd like to try it out, see if it's for you.
I might take you up on that. I know me and some of the homies want to come to a Lockhaven event at some point, so I might take you up on that when that
Oh.
happens. So it's a little bit less of a journey for you.
Yeah, CTFI is coming up in April, so
Oh, that is on my calendar actually.
yes.
But yeah, anyways, stained glass work. Also, the devil has been whispering in my ear to do chain work. Like I just have this idea of making my whole armor kit and just being this cool badass who made their entire armor kit and making a chainmail shirt and stuff. But I don't think that's gonna happen. So many people are like, don't do it. It's just gonna fall apart. It takes so much time. But I'm like, but it would be so cool looking.
Yeah, I could definitely see you rocking that. You look really cool in your lamellar. So,
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
do you have a favorite ANS tourney style? Are there any tournament styles that you'd prefer to see more of at Kingdom events or even at the Grand Duchy event?
Honestly, I'm a terrible one to ask this question. I really don't like ANS tournaments. And the reason for that being just because there are so many mediums out there. So, especially formats like Best of the Best, I find it's a really cool concept and like adds a cool competitive edge, but like how it's really difficult to take like here's this really awesome like full ensemble of garb done really well and compare it say against I made a cathedral window out of stained glass that is also near flawless. Like how do you compare those two? How do you decide who's the winner there, especially when you have a bunch of amateur artisans like ourselves? It all comes down to preference and then feelings get hurt, etc., etc. So I'm not a huge advocate of tournaments so much as I am of showcases. So I guess that answers your question a little bit. I do think showcases are super valuable for people to kind of just like throw things on the table and highlight, their different arts and give performers the chance and stage to, sing or do their plays or do their dances or things like that. Because without those opportunities, you're just kind of praying and hoping somebody recognizes you or sees your stuff on the internet. So I am a big liker of the showcase style tournament, if you could call it a tournament at that point. But yeah.
Yeah, and that's understandable. I mean, it definitely feels, especially at the Kingdom level, when you have so many different art styles, it's kind of comparing apples to oranges. I know in previous versions of Amtgard, they did have different, what's the word, like designations for different
Mm-hmm.
art styles you could pick out. But I think it would be interesting to see that again. But yeah, I definitely understand that, comparing a lot of different art forms is pretty
Yeah.
difficult.
And not only that, but I've seen several tournament styles where it doesn't rely so much on the pieces themselves, but like how they are gaming the competition. Like you get so many points for entering the maximum amount of entries. You get extra points if you are on theme and like things that don't really have any like thing related to the piece and the quality itself. But hey, they still won Weapon Master because they gamed the tournament kind of thing, which also leads to kind of bad feelings. So
Yeah.
I like the idea of ANS tournaments. I really do, but we are extremely flawed individuals. It can't be objective.
Yeah, so this is going to be my last ANS related question before I delve more into your masterhoods, specifically. So what would you say is your hardest ANS piece you've done to date out of like all of the projects you've done?
I would say both of these were actually kind of award scrolls, and they just so happened to be for the same person. Different awards, same person. So that's kind of weird. But I did a 3D scroll kind of sculpture, which is really rare for me. I'm usually a 2D kind of girly. I like my pen and paper, my paint and paper. Um, but it was essentially a faux stone base with like a golden placard on it, and a cast resin Xena chakram. This was for Warlord Fikes out in Crystal Groves, who is a big Xena Warrior Princess fan. And so it was a whole lot of like ambition and new medium. And I was just like, what better time to learn all this new stuff than, this really prestigious award? So that was probably the most challenging because I had to cast my own mold for the chakram. I had to pour the resin and mix it with the colors and gold flakes and stuff. And like a lot of mistakes were made. It didn't turn out perfect, but like I'm still pretty damn proud of it. I think it turned out really well. So that one, or just anything with like watercolors. I am so bad at using watercolors. I want to be so good at watercolor. My wife is a beautiful watercolor artist. I cannot paint with watercolors, but damn, I try. So anything with watercolors.
Yeah, I completely understand that with watercolors. It's so like waiting for layering for me.
And I think that's it. I'm so impatient. I just
Yeah, it,
want it done.
yeah, I feel that. So I would actually love to delve a little bit more into your Master Dragon and Master Garber now. So you mentioned that Kaio asked you about what paths you'd like to do early in your Amtgard career. Are there any other things that first inspired you to start creating art for Amtgard, or is there anything that really influences your creative style in the game?
So with garbing specifically, I mentioned I just kind of wanted to like look really cool and have my own custom gear. But I kind of had this audacity. So when I was younger, my grandmother kind of taught me how to sew a little bit, how to use the sewing machine. And I was like, well, I did this like 3 times when I was a kid. How hard can it be? It's very hard, actually. You spend a lot of time cursing at your sewing machine. So I'd say my Nana really inspired me to kind of like pick up garbing, at least in a small capacity, giving me that audacity to even try it. As far as like influences for art style, my own personal art style, I have too many favorites, but like one of my favorites is Alphonse Mucha. So all the art nouveau type stuff, which my knighting scroll back there on the desk is inspired by. I just think the use of color and lines is really beautiful. So that's kind of the style I like to emulate, but I don't often do that because my dragon work has a lot of scrolls. And as I said, I really like to make those personal to the individual. So, for instance, for my Squire Gore, he really loves the anime Demon Slayer, particularly the character Inosuke. And so, for his, of course, he would, Gore. And so, for his Paragon Warrior scroll, I took a panel or a fan art of that character Inosuke and replicated the very like distinct line weight and coloring that that anime uses to make his scroll. So I really enjoyed like kind of copying styles to suit the person and their interests. So it's kind of fun being a little bit of a chameleon in that regard.
It's really interesting how you focus on what people really like and how you work to make sure that, the awards that they receive really reflect that.
And sometimes it's hard. Bless Sir Pip. Honestly, I think she was the creator of the award preference kind of sheet. That has helped so much because you can only do so many eighth order of the rose and have no idea like who this person is or what they're interested in. So you're like, here's a generic rose, enjoy.
Yeah.
So shout out to Pip for blessing us with that beautiful award preference sheet.
How do you define excellence in Amtgard arts?
Ooh, that could be a spicy question there.
We can
um,
skip it if you want.
no, that's okay. Like I'm not shy to talk to anyone about this. My personal opinion is that we are maybe a little bit too lenient as far as dragons go, but I kind of accept that for how ambiguous dragons are. That in addition to this is a hobby. Like nobody should be a master painter, a master carpenter, a master anything. So I think of it as a bell curve. So you like have an average amount of talent as long as they're, in that certain percentile, like you're a master, you are excellent. And kind of on a cheesy note, like how how much are you bringing delight to people, whether it be in personalizing awards, you know, things like that. I think are really, really important. How much like effort and time, which I know isn't a super popular opinion, and I'm probably not expressing myself right because time does not necessarily equate to excellence, if that makes sense. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure what I'm trying to say. But as a general worldview of art, my opinion is pretty severe, and I think some of us, perhaps even myself included, aren't really masterful or have expertise in these areas. But as the game of Amtgard or Bell or whatever, yeah, we're top notch. We're masters.
Yeah, so you're saying that relative to the game,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I guess I can elaborate a little bit more. So my wife, she went to art school. She has a degree in illustration, very proficient watercolor painter, does absolutely bonkers stuff. Has submitted a few things to Amtgard comparatively as like across the board, like those couple of pieces, and I recognize my bias as my wife, but like those just couple of pieces were masterworks. But of course, she sits at like three dragons or something just because
Yeah.
the cultural aspects of the game. So, like, mastery is kind of, I don't know, a complex issue, and we could probably have a whole entire conversation just on this question. But like, overall, we have a lot of beautiful artists, a lot of passionate artists. I guess that's a good keyword. Like the difference is passion. Like a lot of people put their soul into it. And I think you can see that a lot in some of the pieces that we see in our game.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's completely understandable. I really appreciate you going in depth into how you feel about it and stuff because it makes sense. Like,
Yeah, and if anybody is like confused about my take, I know I ramble a little bit and maybe miss the point or maybe disagrees with me. I definitely am excited to discuss more about this. Like
yeah, I'd love to talk more with you about it, but like, uh,
there's so many questions.
yes, precisely. So, what qualities would you like to see in garbing or leatherworking for big tournaments or keystone projects?
So garbing or leather work, I would definitely err more towards having a complete set. So a full ensemble of garb or a full kit of armor, or like you made bracers for an entire fighting company. As just a off the top of my head example. Some people might disagree. Well, it's just bracers, blah, blah, whatever. But neither here nor there. I am looking for, we use this in my field of work a lot, the fit, feel, and finish. So, is the fit of the piece suitable towards the wearer? Both, like, does it fit their physical dimensions well? Um, does it enable the kind of mobility and things that they are required? Like, obviously, you're not going to be out there battle gaming in a ball gown, but you're going to want more maneuverability in a kit of armor. So tailored to the body and fits the appropriate scenario. The feel of it. So are you using good materials? And that doesn't necessarily mean expensive, right? Like you can thrift some linen. I've done it before. I know several other master garbers have thrifted linen. Thrift your linen. A lot of people will ditch their tablecloths and bed sheets and stuff. It's super great. But are you using nice materials? Nobody wants to roll up in like some poly blend tunic that you're going to get stanky and not breathable in. Are you using the appropriate materials? So are you using like a chrome tan leather versus a veg tan? Is your veg tan the right weight? Similarly with fabrics, like are you achieving the right kind of like flowiness or drapery or blah 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 blah. And then finally finish, like are all of your edges crisp? Like have you beveled the edges of your leather? Have you burnished them? For your garb, have you finished your seams? How have you finished your seams? Like, is it appropriate for the fabric type? You know, have you snipped loose threads? All of the like little nitpicky details to make it look like you just bought this brand new off the shelf.
Yeah, and that's really helpful. I really appreciate that. So, how do you plan large projects? For example, court garb, knighting gifts, big leatherworking sets, or kingdom level ANS entries?
So I keep a tiny sketchbook. So often I will either just sketch or doodle, or even just take notes, or often it's a combination of both. I'm working on a kit of armor right now, having a like court jester type thing. So I'm just using a pencil, black and white, kind of sketching out, how I kind of want it to look, taking notes on like colors or ideas on any symbols or patterns I might want. And sometimes even specifically as like, oh, I know I have this really cool fabric like in my stash somewhere. I want to use that fabric. Sometimes I enhance this by like taking a picture and transferring it over onto my iPad and like colorizing some things, like doing color swatches or doing like a mood board, I guess, is really helpful for me. Mood boards are super helpful for me when I'm doing scrolls, especially. I won't always sketch them out. Sometimes I just kind of like one and done it and I do a mood board and then I just go with it. But usually I am sketching out a preliminary idea. My wife is a huge help with her art background, making sure that it's like balanced or my colors are appropriate or all of that stuff. So super helpful. I got a cheat code in my back pocket.
That's so cool. I really like listening to how you plan it. That's pretty neat. So, what do you think makes for fair, effective, and encouraging ANS judging?
Fair, effective, and encouraging. That's a tough one. Like even in a community slash kingdom as large as the Rising Winds, which has like 300 plus events, it's still a pretty relatively small number, especially when you whittle it down to just the people who do ANS. So you're going to know whose entry that is. So there's always going to be some kind of inherent bias um, for or against some competitors. Not only that, like as I've said before, we are a hobby game, hobby sport, hobbyist ANSers. So we don't all have the expertise in what makes a good, I don't know, a crochet top. Like I know absolutely nothing about crochet. So I will use this as an example of something that I do to ensure that it is fairly judged is I will grab somebody who does do crochet. Even if they're not a judge, I will either message them or be like, hey, can you come look at this and walk me through this? Because they're going to know way better than I am. And they'll point out like, hey, yeah, there's like, look for this. This is indicative of like missed stitches or I don't know, I'm kind of just like bullshitting here. I don't know all the terminology of crochet. I'm sure I have some crocheters, crocheters, whatever the term is, like rolling their eyes or maybe laughing a little bit. I don't know. But I try my best to defer to expert opinions and reflect that in my notes when I'm giving feedback. That's another thing that I think often goes undone is the feedback portion. I know A&S competitions can take forever, just the judging part alone. So judges are already spent at that point by the time you get to the feedback part. But that is probably the most critical part of an A&S tournament is giving the participants that feedback. So even if it's just like, hey, send me a note on Discord. I have a ton of notes for you. I took pictures, blah, 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 for you to like have that visual reminder of what you wanted to talk to them about, or approaching them afterwards and having a verbal conversation, or doing like even just vague bullet points so you can recall what you want to discuss with them and help them improve on their path later on.
Awesome. And as a follow-up question to that, actually, and this is going to be the final question for ANS before we kind of jump over to service and advocacy. How do you handle criticism or judging, constructive or otherwise?
How do I handle it? Probably not good. I'm really sensitive. And no, there is a grain of truth in that. I am a really sensitive individual. So it has taken a lot of like personal reflection and work to realize that, hey, every critique is not an assassination of my character or my ability or my future ability, even. And I think the community has gotten a lot better in the way that they have worded their critiques. It is more constructive and actionable rather than these colors are ugly. I didn't like it. Like, I'm sorry. Like, would you like to add on to that? Like, something more helpful is I'm not sure that these colors work together. Have you thought about using this and this instead? Or here are some references to like maybe explore color palettes or, you know, things like that. So I think our community has gotten a lot better on providing constructive, actionable feedback along with being supportive. So that has helped me in addition to just kind of working on myself and being able to take that feedback. So shout out to our community for always doing better.
And that's awesome. That's a really awesome way to kind of wrap up the ANS part. So I'd like to talk to you about your service experience with service cratting and your advocacy. What's the most challenging or fun part of coordinating different things for an event?
The most challenging part is definitely recruiting, organizing, and ensuring your volunteers are going to show up, especially in the moment at the events. Because people, I am sure I have been guilty of this myself, get wrapped up in the moment and, oh shit, I actually had an event services shift, or, you know. So I'd say that's probably the most stressful and challenging part, being in a crap position at least. Can you rephrase your not rephrase, but repeat your question again to make sure I'm hitting your points here?
Oh yeah, what's the most challenging or fun part of coordinating different things for an event?
Okay, different thing for event. Yeah, so your volunteers, that is the most challenging. The most fun part is you get to interact with different circles than you usually associate with. As a crat, you're seeing everybody, like people you don't get to often sit down and have a chat with. Like it's a good excuse to kind of interact with those people and vibe check and see if they need anything. So that's pretty fun.
Oh, and I probably should have asked this before. What positions have you cratted previously? Just like off the top of your head, if you don't mind.
I have done Gatocrat several times for Kingdom level. I also did Hypecrat a few times, there was also a Lockhaven event that I was the Auto, Feast, and Night Quest, I think, Krat all in one. So that was
Oh, wow.
pretty bonkers and stressful. Turned out to be a pretty fun event, I think. I don't know, but miscellaneous positions. I've considered autocrating a kingdom event, but I don't know that I want to do that to myself. So thank you to everyone who has ever autocrated an event.
What are ways that Krats can be more mindful of non-combatant participants, in your opinion?
That one is a little challenging for me to answer since I am so invested in the battle game community. So I guess take what I have to say about that with a grain of salt. But I really have appreciated and have seen the efforts the last couple of Rising Winds events have made to include non-combatants. You part of that kind of initiative, especially with your mocktails and things like that. But we've had like carnivals or like casino night type things going on. So that's been super fun for non-combatants. We had a like faction war event where non-coms had their own points that they could capture by doing specific tasks. And I heard good things about that too. So I think if we're not, super great at it right now, we're at least headed in towards the right direction. And I really look forward to seeing what kind of new ideas and more immersion and more involvement we can give non-coms.
So, I would like to focus more now on your advocacy for Valkyrie tournaments, which is what I'm actually pretty excited about. So, I know that this is technically a non-combat series, but you know what? Screw it. This is my
it's
series. I want to talk
it's
about it.
it's
So,
your series. You hop off and do whatever you want. People can make their own channels or series or whatever.
so I would love to talk with you about your service related to advocacy for Valkyrie tournaments.
Yeah. So like a lot of my other, I guess, paths or journeys, it's kind of been a slow build up. I started at the ground level working on myself and like learning the skills, sitting and watching YouTube videos of Sword Knight Boot Camp and asking questions of people that like were safe people in my community. That's one of the blessings that I have is I have a lot of great advocates that other Valkyrie fighters might not have. Cis male fighters can be pretty intimidating, especially even like in 2018. I think when I first started the game, like is pretty intimidating. There's still quite a lot of toxicity. So I guess building my own skills first, and then once I felt I was at a certain level, what that level was, can't really define. It was very arbitrary. It was more just like, okay, I feel ready now to like share this with other people. And honestly, I don't think that point came until I met Warlord Fikes out of Crystal Groves. I met her at the Valkyrie tournament at Keep. I forget what year it was, but basically at that point I was getting so frustrated. I felt so like lonely being one of the very few like women on the field, either like battle gaming or fighting in tournaments. I was like, what's the point? But I met her and it was kind of nice like having somebody to talk to commiserate over like very similar, like very serious issues and struggles and things that we have had to deal with. So even just having that one person was super great. And so kind of around that point, I was like, all right, I think I'm ready to like step this up a notch. And I put it upon myself to kind of be that person that Fikes was for me to other people. And it was kind of challenging at first because it took, having Valkyrie tournaments to really be able to find that sort of community, to find non-male fighters that would want to be a part of that community and kind of build it. But, just being very persistent, being very intentional with those fighters that I did see on the field, whether it be at tournaments, which were mostly just open tournaments at that time, and being like, hey, we got this, and things like that, I think was really kind of the fire starter for this kind of Valkyrie movement that we're seeing in the Rising Winds and across Amtgard. And luckily, my passion has inspired a lot of the people in my life who are very heavily involved in our kingdom. So our champions, our monarchs, or things like that. I'm lucky to have them as friends. And so by them being my friend, they are invested in my interests. And so I can kind of push my interests onto them, like, hey, support me in, making Valkyrie tournaments a thing. And, so they became slowly more consistent and, build it and they will come. They started becoming more consistent. We started having them at hard stop, and now they're becoming more consistent. And so now we have, easily 15 competitors now, which doesn't seem like a lot, but these fighters are solid competition. Like recently at Bridge Wars, we had a 6 and under, but I was like, are you sure this is 6 and under? Like these girly pops are really swinging some foam out here. I'm gonna really start having to train. But in that mix of like, one-on-one advocacy of different Valkyrie fighters in my community, also kind of stepping out of my comfort zone and being a teacher. So doing like footwork 101 or single sword 101 type classes. Even if just one person showed up, like, yeah, it's a bummer, but like that was one person who gained that much more knowledge. So just being persistent and not being down on myself about failures or self-perceived failures has really paid off. Because like I said, this past tournament is a 6 and under, but like it was so cool. It was just like a moment of seeing the fruits of my labor and the labor of people like Fikes, of people like Heron out of, I believe Heron's out of Northern Lights, but all of these other like prolific Valkyrie fighters in our community, like we are finally doing it. People still might not give us the credit that like open tournaments and the broad scheme of fighters might have, but like we aren't far off. We now have a space where we feel comfortable to train and fight and become better and be ourselves. Like it's not going to be long until we see these girly pops kicking ass in open tournaments.
What advice would you have for anyone who's interested in running Valkyrie tournaments at, perhaps the park or Grand Duchy level, or someone who is interested in fighting but feels kind of intimidated by the current climate of stuff outside of Valkyrie tournaments?
Right. Yeah. And that's totally valid and real, even still, with the growth in the community. As far as like somebody who is interested in running Valkyrie tournaments, all it really takes is kind of one, the understanding that it is more than likely going to be a smaller tournament, especially if you're doing a very like chapter or regional specific. Like you might only have 2 at best Valkyries if you're doing it at a park level, and maybe only 5 if you're doing it at a Grand Duchy level, for instance. So just kind of being real with your expectations, like not expecting a grand turnout. But secondly, just run it like any other combat tournament. Have your quality reeves, and by that I mean have the reeves just do their job. So many times in Valkyrie tournaments, I have found reeves more or less infantilizing fighters because the skill set historically has been a little bit lower. So you get those kind of like weird interactions. So I think the biggest emphasis is for your reeves to be those like fair and decisive, but kind individuals. Like, hey, that actually wasn't a valid shot. And then decide if you want to reset or who won that interaction. Don't be like, oh, well, what do you think it was? No. Like, this is a real tournament. Just because the skill level is there doesn't mean it's not as serious. So I think that's the most important part, is just having good reeves and a good tournament organizer to kind of emphasize that, hey, this is a real tournament. This is exactly like any other tournament. We're just making it accessible for underrepresented genders.
And that's really awesome. It's like one of my favorite initiatives I've seen in Amtgard to date, so I'm really excited. How do you see the future of Valkyrie tournaments? Like, as it builds up in the community and as we go on, do you have any specific goals in mind for the future of them?
You know, I wanted to say I would hope that we would get to a point where we can eliminate them. I'm not sure if that is what I want or a reasonable goal because there is still like a huge amount of like sexual dimorphism between male bodied individuals and female bodied individuals. I'm not a scientist or a biologist or anything by that means. I just like have a lot of free time at work and read a lot of research papers and stuff. But there are a lot of studies that show that, things like reaction time, grip strength, ACL tears, there's a disparity between like male bodied and female bodied individuals that give male bodied individuals an advantage. So I don't know that eliminating Valkyrie tournaments completely should be a thing or will be a thing. I'm kind of undecided on that. But kind of the point I am getting to is that, as I mentioned, I think we're rapidly approaching a point where we're gaining a really solid player base of Valkyrie fighters who have a very like real and fierce skill set. We're going to see them bracketing, taking first in open tournaments here in the next couple of years, if not sooner. So while I think Valkyrie tournaments will always have a place, just to kind of keep perpetuating the fighting spirit of Valkyries and giving us that kind of safe space to toe the waters, I don't think it will be quite as prolific as what we're seeing right now.
That's really interesting. Thank you. It definitely puts a lot into perspective, yeah. So I'm going to ask you two more questions regarding service, and then I'll ask some about fighting, and then we'll close. Is that okay? What principles guide the way you approach service opportunities in the game?
I think the very like generic, like treat people how you want to be treated and everything in moderation are just two guiding principles I try to abide by for most anything. So, as it pertains to service in particular, making decisions that is going to be kind to the most amount of people. Not everybody is going to be happy, of course, especially with this very opinionated group of individuals we have in Amtgard, but always at least trying to give everything a good faith try in your decision making. And then when issues do arise, which they inevitably will, have a good faith conversation, be willing to make adjustments, and have those hard, sometimes very hard discussions that we don't want to have because all of us have anxiety and confrontation issues one way or another, and just kind of trying to do better. And then as far as everything in moderation, I guess in a very basic way to explain this, like for an event's sake, you can't just have everything battle games all the time. Like you are isolating a huge portion of what makes our events great and what makes our events actually happen. If we are not catering some of our efforts to the people like running this event or making the event pretty, we are just hitting each other in little sundresses in a grassy lot with no decoration. Like that's what it is. If we didn't have our service people, if we didn't have our A&S people, like it would just be really sad. So everything in moderation, like you can't expect the most out of everything and everyone all the time.
So, as someone who has a service-related masterhood, what qualities or skills should those on the service path focus on early when like they're first getting started into the game?
When you're first getting started, I think it's just kind of following through, like doing the thing that you said you were going to do, the thing that you signed up to do, or even just noticing a problem and fixing it. So, at a very basic level, people are leaving their water bottles around. Okay, pick them up and throw them out. Boom. Wow, you earned your first rose. Amazing. Working up the way up the ladder there, fourth, fifth, and sixth, you're signing up for volunteer shifts to do gate, to patrol the event site, to help set up decorations and things like that. And this is, as we get up there, this is where some people might disagree with me. But as you're getting up there, I want to see more ownership and intention, if that makes sense. Not necessarily, and I guess a little bit of delegation. Like, I still want the person, especially in the rose path, you have your lions, which is your delegation, but and then your rose, which is your you are doing the service. It really, while I'm glad we have master roses that are just endless workhorses, I would love to see less of that. I would love to see those master roses have a little bit more, and delegation is probably the wrong word I'm looking for, judgment in being able to divvy out that work and get the work done still. So, like, many hands make light work type of stuff. Like, you don't always have to be the one, just be the one that is ensuring that the work is done. I think that makes a master. Like, you are in there doing the work, but not necessarily alone. The work is getting done together.
Thank you very much for that. And would you mind if I asked you two questions about being a knight? So what does receiving knighthood mean to you personally?
For me personally, and like, this is gonna sound like me kind of brushing it off a little bit. It means I get to wear a different color belt. And that's not to say that knighthood isn't awesome and cool and prestigious or anything. Like, and not to be cheesy, but it, like, as a kid, I would always like play pretend and I'd want to be a knight. And I had all these like grand storybook ideas of honor and chivalry and, protecting people and things. Like, I'm a very protective person. And so, kind of me as an individual, I have always tried to embody those ideals that I had as a little kid of like knights and superheroes and protector type figures. And so to like have the white belt in Amtgard, I don't feel like it is much different than what I have been doing. I think the biggest difference is that I try and spend more focus on being aware of my interactions with people and advocating more than I would have normally. I'm more active in my protection and advocacy than kind of passive as I may have been before knighthood.
Oh, so do you see that as a responsibility that comes with knighthood, or do you see like anything else as a potential responsibility that comes with knighthood, or do you think those are qualities that you should already have that it might emphasize more?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. That's like a chicken or the egg type situation.
Okay, you don't have to answer if you don't
No,
want to. I'm kind of
no,
just
no. I think you bring up a good point. Like, I think you should have those qualities to a degree, but like, as a knight, the way we do knighthood culturally, whether or not you agree with it or not, is you get your masterhood, you display your mastery of a certain subject, and then if you meet the other criterion, you become a knight. So I think that path to knighthood is showing that you can teach and be a mentor and do all of those things. I think when you step into knighthood, some of that is dialed back a bit. Like, you don't always have to be the one teaching classes or being a mentor, but you do still need to be an advocate. You do still need to be the one speaking up. You do need to be the one having those hard conversations. So while your role might not on the surface look as active as you once were when you were a master slash in that weird limbo space between masterhood and knighthood, you should still be very much involved, like under the surface, and I guess doing your little puppet strings on the upcoming masters and knights to be.
That's really interesting. Thank you. I appreciate that perspective. It's really cool to see how you see mentorship and advocacy as such a big part of it, which is pretty cool. So I would like to go into some fighter and non-combat questions. So you're the best of both worlds, right? So you do a lot of both. Do you think your background with fighting in the game helps with non-combat contributions like service or vice versa?
I think my non-combat kind of successes and experiences have helped the combat aspect, but not so much vice versa. The battle gaming and combat aspect is like, it's very selfish. Like, I just want to play my game. I don't care if there's Reeves, whatever, whatever. And oftentimes we're very mean to our like smiths who are out here making these games. Like, oh, that was a shitty game or whatever, whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're like making this happen for us. Why are we being so mean? But like I said, I think having that non-com experience of like having that kind of creative aspect, like you can have a theater of the mind, I guess, when you're stepping on the battlefield. Like, oh, these inflatables are castles, or, you know, this flag isn't a flag, but it's a torch, or, you know, it's a tower, things like that. So that part in a very like play pretend way is kind of cool. But I think it also lends itself to being more creative with like terrain or effects or, you know, different setups of a battlefield. It definitely provides a more immersive experience rather than I'm using a pool noodle in the middle of a grassy lot, as I joked about earlier. Like, non-coms benefit combatants like significantly more than combatants impact and influence the non-combatants. If anything, we are drains, we are leeches on the non-combatants. So thank you to everybody more involved and invested in all of the leadership and service and things that make events and other things great about our game.
So how do you balance your time between combat aspects of Amtgard and non-com aspects of Amtgard?
Um, so park day, like on a dated, like an average basis. So Sundays, park days, those are for battle games. And then when I'm home by myself, when my wife is gone doing her horse girl thing, it is arts and crafts time. And then when I'm sitting at my desk at work, bored, it is time to stir the pot. Time to check all my boxes, check all my all my people, making sure that they have what they need. If there's anything I can do for them, so I'm very fortunate in that regard to have like a job that allows me to like keep tabs on people probably more frequently than others might do. So it's really easy to kind of balance all of that on like an average basis. At events, I'm terrible. I'm terrible at trying to balance all of that. There's so much cool stuff happening at events. Like I mentioned, we have the circus or carnival, the like poker, gambling center, whatever. I have not actually been a part of that yet. It sounds cool as hell, but I'm always like off doing something else, fighting or God knows what else. So like it's really hard to balance all that stuff at an event. Like, I don't know. So it's a disaster at events. I really try. So far it hasn't worked out for me.
And I get that too, because I'm very like I try to do a balance between doing service and not doing service at events, but then the whole time I'm like, let's go, there's people to help. So I get that. So, and I am really interested to hear your perspective on this as someone who fights. So a lot of non-combatants are trying to get fighters more engaged in the ANS aspect of Amtgard, like classes, panels where they do classes for fighting example. So what changes or additions to non-combat activities would you suggest to make them more engaging for fighters?
That one might be a little hard. I feel like some people are just so tunnel visioned on like, I'm here to battle game. I don't care about classes. I don't care about helping people. I don't care about, I just want to swing my stick and say my magic spell, and that's it. I don't care about anything else. So that's going to be a case by case basis. I'm trying to think of like, for me personally, what would like really sell me on like like on my kind of like 60-40 or 80-20 balance, what would kind of make me lean more towards the ANS service type thing. And I'm not sure I have an answer, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, I think there's always going to be this kind of weird separation or war between the two. um, but I think getting more like integration and more variation at our events. As I mentioned, like having non-com nodes that influence battle games, I think has been great. But again, that's serving the fighting community more than it's serving the non-com community. Yeah, I am not sure what you could do to pull combatants into wanting to do ANS more, other
And
than hey, get a free thing, because free shit always gets people to.
Amtgard is just a bunch of college kids who just
Yeah,
want free things.
we are frat bros.
And it's also completely valid that you wouldn't have an answer for that too. I also think it's very much subjective. Like if you have someone who prefers militia to like spellcasting and stuff, I mean, they're not going to be drawn in by the same stuff.
Hmm.
So that's fair. So, I'm going to do the closing questions now. So, what's one lesson you've learned from Amtgard that you carry with you?
One lesson, I've learned a lot of lessons, but I will probably go with my most recent one. So this year was a little bit rough for me in Amtgard. I feel like there were a lot of like personal, interpersonal blowups and fires, and it really just kind of like drained me. So I ended up taking sort of like 3 months off. Probably could have been longer, but fortunately, in those 3 months, I had a lot of time to reflect on how I talk to people and my own self worth, and the fact that I don't have to like everybody and not everybody has to like me, and that's okay. We can all still get along and those things still be true. So, kind of just repeating that as a mantra is slowly helping me heal and be able to have harder conversations with people and also not be such a people pleaser. So, have conversations and not be a people pleaser have been two like lessons I have learned most recently. And it's a day to day basis on whether or not I succeed at those lessons or not. But we are human and we're working on it. We're trying to have those hard conversations to avoid all the drama and blow ups of yesteryear, and also just being kinder and more realistic to myself and my expectations.
And how has being a non-combatant, or sorry, how has being part of the non-combat community shaped your Amtgard journey?
I think it has made me respect the non-com community a lot more than I would have if I would just gotten purely into the sport aspect of it. I referenced a lot of people might complain about how a battle game was set up or whatever. And, sometimes I'm guilty of that too. But I think being also a part of that non-com community and being invested in those things allows me to have those set of eyes to like stop and think and be like, actually, they probably spent a lot of time working on this. They volunteered their time to set it up, to reave it, to do XYZ with it. Like, we can be a little kinder in that regard. And the same goes with events overall. Like, once again, I'll use that example. We could just be playing with foam pool noodles in a grassy lot, but instead we have a nice pavilion that is decorated. We have, signage around. We have people doing quests and dress up. We have the Staggered Hound Tavern. We have the Tooth and Hookah. We have all these different things that we can be part of, and it's super great.
And what do you hope your legacy in Amtgard will be?
I hope my legacy will be specifically the use of the term fart baby as a totally non-serious answer. But even as non-serious as that is, I think that encapsulates me as a person, or at least who I want to be in this little silly game sport land of pretend. It's a non-serious thing, and sometimes you just got to remember to not be a fart baby. I guess a non-serious serious answer in that one.
And that's valid because I definitely noticed I've started using it a bit more ever since I joined the Cackle and French chat. So
It's spreading like wildfire. I am so proud. This will be my legacy.
being like on a more serious note though, like I do think that especially as a fighter and someone who champions other non-men to fight, you're pretty well known for being a mentor to people and for empowering people to like fight more and do more in the game too. So don't sell yourself short.
I try not to. I require lots of reminders, that pesky imposter syndrome.
So, and for a final question, where do you see Amtgard growing in the future?
It's a good question. I just hope it will grow into being a less critical of a space. I'm particularly thinking of like our award culture right off the top of my head. I love the awards, the idea of the award system. It gives people, it attempts to give people kind of like this goal to achieve, which some people might not have in their like mundane lives. It's like, hey, here's this cool thing that I can do in a hobby I really enjoy. I can impact this hobby that I enjoy in a real way. So I think the concept of awards is really cool, but like I really hope Amtgard can be kinder in the future in that regard. So I hope that's where we go, is more communication and understanding and kindness, um, whether it be in award culture or on the field or judging each other's ANS. Um, we're all here playing pretend in our sundresses. It's gonna be okay.
I really, really, really appreciate your time tonight, and thank you very much for allowing me to do this interview.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
been absolutely wonderful. So, thank you very much. And I'm
Yeah,
going
thank you
to.
for inviting me.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you'd like to hear more about non-combat participants in Amtgard, consider clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. This lets me know you like my content and would like to listen to more in the future. If you would like someone specific to be interviewed, or you'd like to have me interview you, please reach out to my Discord server at Mela or message me on Facebook using my real name, Megan McLean. Thank you!